New law gives California schools 2 years to ban or restrict smartphone use among students on campus. Governor Gavin Newsom just signed the bipartisan legislation today. One of the bill's authors is Long Beach Assemblymember Josh Lowenthal, who joins me now live. Assemblymember, thanks so much for being here.
Appreciate your interest. Thank you.
So how does this work?
Well, listen, the first thing we need to do is recognize how awful mental health is for young people today. It's much worse than it was 10 years ago. So anything from depression, anxiety, all the way to suicide and eating disorders are really exponentially worse than 10 years ago. So we need to do something. And what this new law does is it requires districts to come up with their own formula to restrict cell phone use in schools. It's pretty straightforward.
It doesn't necessarily require them to get rid of the phones, right?
That's exactly right. And as a matter of fact, there's no one size fits all. What I mean by that is, you know, an urban district is going to have completely different needs than a rural district. And monitoring use of cell phones can have different contexts there. My district, for example, includes Catalina Island. There are students that have to monitor their parents out in boats at any given time. So every district knows what its needs are, and everybody knows that school use during the day, during class, is really harming students right now. So they'll come up with their own methods to restrict it.
Yeah, because that is one thing a lot of parents might hear about this, and they're worried about emergencies, that they want to be able to be in communication with their kids in an emergency. What say you to that?
I'm glad you brought that up. The last thing that we want to do is create an unsafe environment for students or parents alike. And so the bill specifically excludes emergency situations. Students can still access their phones in emergencies, and that's anything from a school shooter, but to an earthquake or any other emergency.
You know, California is not on an island with this. We're seeing all states across the country grapple with this. One of Governor Newsom's favorite people, the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, taking some decisive action on trying to ban phones from schools in Florida. What are you seeing in other states, and how is that informing what we're doing here?
Well, it's fascinating. Every state's got its own, ideas on how to deal with this, but there are virtually no states that are saying it's not a problem. What I love about this today is it is not hijacked bipartisanship. This is a bipartisan bill, Democrats, Republicans coming together to do what's best for our youth and their development. So every state's handling a little bit differently based on the nuances of that state and how they need to use mobile technology, but everybody's taking it on.
And it's one of the few things you do see Republicans and Democrats agreeing on nationwide and here in California, even the governor getting some praise from some Republicans here in the state for it. So there's a lot of different ways to do this, and you say it's now up to the districts and all of that. But what would be one way to potentially actually do this, the logistics of making this happen?
Well, districts are already doing them. Los Angeles Unified School District already has its own format. This is just requiring that every district does it. So I have 3 daughters. They're 14, 12, and 10 years old. My 14-year-old, a 9th grader, has a phone. And in her school, when she walks into the classroom, she has to deposit into a phone caddy. So it's there in the classroom in the case of an emergency, but she can't access it during the class. That's one example of how it works very effectively.
And there's other examples, too, where they're able to keep it in their bag but not take it out, or it'll be up to, I guess, all these different districts to figure it out. Assemblymember Josh Lowenthal, it's something so many parents are so focused on. We appreciate you coming on and joining us. Thanks so much.